Hey, hi folks. This is a fourth video in a series of posts that we've been discussing on the BowTie funnel. In just what we've been talking about is the traditional funnel was built for acquisition, for the sale, right? For you to measure the CAC payback periods. But the real money is really made post sale. That's why you see this BowTie funnel, right? It's really made. The recurring revenue happens post sale. That's where the retention is. That's where the customer delight is. That's where the customers buy more products from you. It's where the fun is. And we've talked through at length, in depth, the entire checklist on what should go in each part of this funnel. I'm going to link the previous videos on this post, and let's continue with the onboarding. We have discussed still one. What are the things that should go once the deal is in the onboarding stage, right? One, does the CSM know who at customers end, right? Who's who at the customers end from sales? When sales has spoken, they have figured a people matrix at the organization that they sold to. Does CSM know who are they talking, who the champion is, who the executive sponsor is? All of that is going to be critical. Has sales made an intro and transfer out to CSM? This tends to happen in most organizations. Nothing spectacular at a checklist. Does the CSM know if sales promised anything outside standard terms? Happens all the time, where sales went over enthusiastically, promised something outside your standard contract structure, and CSM is in shock when they learn about it. So you need this structure. Ideally, you want to automate this. Find a way to automate this. Capture it on the CRM as part of your AE to sales to CSM handshake, right? Charted out the week-on-week onboarding plan. Has the CSM put the entire week-on-week plan? So there is expectation at the customer's end on how long the process on onboarding looks like. Who is accountable if this POC goes? An important question, and happens all the time. Even though I'm a RevOps person, I have done sales, I've done marketing, I've also led a technical CS team in my previous stint. And one thing you learn all the time is, unless you found an insurance to your SPOC, if there is only one person you're talking week on week, and that person, even if they go on a month-long leave, they go on a paternity leave, they move organization, you are in for a soup. A very, 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 very painful position to be in. So it's super important. Do you know who's who, right? Have you figured if your SPOC goes, who's the backup? Someone who has been through the entire onboarding, they know in and out. So you're not dependent on one person for your deal to get through. Is sales getting comped before onboarding? Again, it's a funny part of the incentive structure. If you paid out your sales and your onboarding never completes, right? Your closed one to onboarding rate, let's say, is 50%, which is poor, very poor. And if sales get comped before that, you're in all kinds of issues, right? There is again a Danny Kahneman is a Nobel laureate who also wrote about this, right? Basic hypothesis in this behavioral psychological aspect is that when you give money to someone, right, even if you told the sales that, hey, you know what, if the onboarding does not happen in 2 months' time, I'm going to claw back the money. This is in the contract. But human brain operates very differently. When the money hits my bank, very well knowing that it could be taken out if the customer does not get onboarded fully, and when you claw that money back, I really feel pain. I really feel hurtful about that. And a very beautiful behavioral psychology experiment that Danny Kahneman did. The reason I'm also bringing Danny Kahneman up on this conversation is, unfortunately, we lost Danny Kahneman. He died this week, in fact, yesterday. And a phenomenal Nobel laureate. His work in behavioral psychology is phenomenal, right? A lot of people in sales have in fact read a lot of his books. And if you haven't, I highly encourage you go figure. At the end of the day, sales is, irrespective of all the complicated process, all the complicated AI structures, all of it, we are still selling one person to other. Of course, the world's fast inching from one bot to other, but where's the fun in that? There's always human element to everything, right? Alrighty, so did we publish post-training documentation? Again, this fairly happens in most organizations, a checklist item really here. Now, how do you measure adoption? Has sales shared use cases that customer wants solved with our product, right? The sales has spent the most amount of time before closure. Have we decided what are the use cases that will decide that the customer is fully onboarded? Those are the use cases we promised our product will solve. Have we inked that? Have we set that expectation? Have we measured that? What constitutes that the product has been adopted, right? You could say, you know what, they know, they went through all my videos, they went through all the documentation. Hey, you know what, they just went ahead and clicked on the product twice or thrice this week, and hence they are adopted. No, that's a very poor way of saying it. Are they using the product for the use cases you said? So constitute, define what does product adoption mean? How do you measure that? There's all kind of automation that you can create. If they're not adopting, you could preempt and push them to adopt. See what the hiccups are. If they have adopted, you could push them to use your cross-sell products, right? You could pitch another products. All kinds of amazing things happen when you have this part figured out. Does sales have visibility into adoption metrics, right? Sales should always know if the product they sold, what kind of adoption metrics are they going into. Is there an escalation mechanism if adoption does not complete in X days? And if there is an escalation, and if there isn't, what then? It's super important you have this. Have you identified a backup to our SPOC at customer end should they leave the org? This again figures with whatever we just said, right? I'm so sorry. All right, so going back to the first impact. I'm so sorry, I'm going to just quickly put on mute. Yeah. Now, these two are the most important pieces that we'll discuss. That's where the recurring impact comes, right? On the first impact, what constitutes first impact? Again, I'm going to quickly glimpse on our funnel here. The moment they start put your product to test on the use cases you promised, and post onboarding, they're actually on a self-serve. They figure it, they're using it on their own. This is when you can start saying that they have seen the first impact. You'll want to define what constitutes your first impact. Does the SPOC approve they have achieved first impact with our product? You need this in writing. Has the SPOC communicated in writing internally with the leadership about the first impact? You want your SPOC at the customer end to tell their leadership that they have achieved first impact. They start seeing value with our product. Super, super important that they internally write and tell their leadership. If you are to retain this customer, if you are to upsell, cross-sell, go expansion mode on this account, you need this happening. And I can assure you this rarely happens in most organizations, and hence the reason I put this checklist out. Did we achieve first impact within deadline, right? Whatever the onboarding promise was, and post that one, we did promise them a timeline, right? Did we achieve that? If no, who needs to be alerted? As much as sales and CS and marketing and go-to-market is all about incentives, there also needs to be a mechanism to penalize. See, the house, which is the organization, the house cannot be losing money for bad players, for bad behavior, right? So you need an accountability framework through and through. Incentivize people doing great, penalize people not doing great. And the last and the most fun part of this conversation, recurring impact. This is where you will make most money out of a single customer. What constitutes recurring impact, right? Again, to give you a glimpse, right? Your product is now part of customers' routine. One classic example that I like to give is Clary, right? See, Clary's figured this recurring impact. If your product is not part of a customer's routine, customer's habit, you will always have a hard time getting your product adopted. Again, going back to the Clary's example, look at this way. Most places that have implemented Clary, they forecast out of Clary. Your reps are probably told on a Wednesday to punch in their numbers. And then on Thursday, their managers, their bosses review those numbers. They probably correct. Maybe an over-enthusiastic AE said they're going to hit $1 million this month. The boss thinks otherwise, they bring it down to $800,000. So there is course correction of that number. And by the time the data is presented to the leadership on, say, Friday, it has already been corrected. And when you show those numbers, that meeting actually runs on Clary, that entire forecast meeting. You see, Clary is itself positioned itself in that routine, that weekly routine, into that weekly forecast meeting. Now, if I am in this organization, I take out Clary, suddenly, you trust me, the entire organization feels lost on how they're supposed to run this meeting that they were earlier running on Clary. You want to be like Clary. You want to put your product in a recurring impact. It should be part of their routine. Only then can you say you have hit recurring impact. So what constitutes recurring impact? Has the SPOC approved they have achieved a recurring impact with our product? You need that in writing. We need them to communicate to their leadership that they have hit recurring impact. And have we trained the trainer, right? Is there a trainer internally? Our SPOC, have they been so well trained that they are training their own internal teams? So you're out of the loop, they're championing your product now. Did we achieve recurring impact within deadline? If not, who needs to be alerted, penalized, right? Does the SPOC plus all engaged parties have written communication from CSM on what are the SLAs and escalation metrics look like? So they know who to reach out. Trust me, customer service is less about fixing issues. It's more about giving certainty to your customer. I, as a customer, feel that there could always be issues with the product. I know, I see that all the time. But knowing out there is someone who is looking into my issue, that certainty that someone's looking into it and they're fixing, their top of the game, I don't have to follow up, is 90% of customer support, right? And you need this SLAs and escalation metrics all published out. Post this stage, right, once recurring impact, what are the next plans, right? How are we building these cross-sell plans? How are we building these upsell plans? Does the CSM have a meeting with Spock on the calendar to review the achievements? This is where most QBRs are. I have a very strong opinion on QBRs. I don't believe QBRs are for customers, but mostly for CSMs. I in fact did a whole survey. I'll also link that in the comment. And in a series of questions, one of the questions at the end of that quiz was, at that survey was, what if you miss QBR? Will your, I asked this question, is the QBR for you? This was for the CSMs that I surveyed, or for your customer? And most people said it was for the customer. But the very immediate question that I followed was, what if you miss your QBR? And the options were, my customer will be mad, my boss will be mad. And the answers flip. Most people who said the QBRs were for customers answered, my boss would be mad. That should tell you something about the QBRs. So all I'm saying is, here on the 7th point here, have a meeting scheduled on the calendar. And on the QBR, that's a whole different story, but most people use QBR as this placeholder. It's not, two different things. When does the account go to account management for expansion deals, right? Now that you have recurring impact, the whole point of recurring impact is the customer super happy with you. They have achieved a saturation with your product. They believe in your product bringing the kind of impact you promise. And now they are at the verge of buying more from you, buying new products from you. How do you plan that out? All that needs to be written out, right? To summarize, this is where it looks like, right? You're winning the deal and recurring impact happens post-sale, right? Put more time and effort in sales marketing efforts if your market is large. This is a market that favors the first mover and unsaturated. This is where you're going after more sales, like you're hitting your first $1 million. You want to go in the acquisition mode, but after a certain point, you want to be here in the post-sale game. If you are in a competitive market that is saturating, put more efforts in championing acquired customers so you can sell them more products, make more money without the repeat cost of acquiring. So irrespective of the market saturation levels, you will always be more capital efficient with this approach, making more money with recurring impact with existing customers. I hope this was meaningful. Happy selling, happy marketing, happy building. Take care.